During the Napoleonic Wars, okay, I wasn't there. I used to teach at a seminary for 26 years. It was a great blessing. I loved it. My students seemed to think that I knew George Washington personally. They were wrong. I knew the Madisons, but I didn't know him. During the Napoleonic Wars, there was a huge battle at Trafalgar. And we know how it ended. The Brits won. It was great. Nelson got himself a square and also a column with him perched up on top. But at the early part of the battle, it was going really, really bad. And a young midshipman, and he panicked, and he ran up to Nelson. And he said, "Admiral, can't you tell that we're surrounded?" In an earlier battle, Nelson had lost his eye, so he had a patch over it. Nelson, upon this statement, "Can't you tell we're surrounded?" took out his telescope, opened it up, put it to his blind eye, closed it and said, "I can't see a thing." I'm so glad you got that joke. I was really worried about it. Sometimes we can't see a thing, even though our eyesight is good. Even though we pass those tests with our ophthalmologists. In this text from the Gospel of John, we hear about sight. The mission this evening, this week, is about memory and mystery and mission. And these texts lend themselves to that. First, in terms of memory, the early church remembered the Hebrew Testament and this particular passage from Samuel. Samuel is going off to find a new king. Saul has offended the Lord, and he's been so robbed of God's blessing. And so here comes Samuel, and it's kind of like a weird American Idol thing. You know, all these people, the sons of Jesse, march out. And at first he goes, "Wow, this guy's really cool. He's tall." Again, this is a very free translation of the Hebrew, but work with me here. He says, "This guy's got to be it." And God says, "No. He's not. Because I see into his heart, and he's not the one." Our memory is that God sees into our hearts. And it's important for us to realize it isn't just that he sees the things that are broken and fragile and incomplete. He sees our hearts filled with promise, filled with love. There's no condemnation from God. There's only the offer of conversion, and whether or not we accept it is a different thing. So he sees, and he says, "Not as human beings see, but as I see." And you and I are being invited to live that way, to look at the world through the lenses of God, through that ability to see. And it's difficult for us sometimes. It's really difficult for us. And so the story about the man born blind, and Jesus, and this is a mystery. Jesus does something which on the surface looks kind of icky. He spits on the ground, takes the dust of the earth, and smears it on the man's eyes. The reference to the earth is reference to God creating Adam out of the dust of the earth, as you and I are created out of the beautiful reality of our world. We are created. And in that, he smears them on his eyes. He tells them to go to the pool of Siloam, which means sent. We'll see that in a little bit while when we talk about missionary discipleship. And the man in that mystery is restored to sight. Now imagine the first thing he sees is the face of Jesus. When you and I open ourselves up to have our sight healed, the first reality we see is Christ Jesus. And you and I then get to share that good news. The irony is that the Pharisees, they can see, They've passed their eye exam, but they can't see. And isn't that an irony? Throughout history, there have been stories about how it is the blind see and the sighted don't. How many of you remember a television series called Designing Women? Can I have hands here? Okay, I can't use that story, so we'll move on. Okay, yeah, it's not going to work. But people who are blind often are much more sensitive and see in a way we don't always see. But God's healing us. God's wanting us to see as he sees. Can you imagine our world if we took that seriously? If we allowed him to do that? We would then see those around us as God sees us. And maybe it would change the way we treat one another. Our world is filled with wonders, don't get me wrong. It's too easy to bash our world, but I think it's pretty safe to say that we don't always see in one another the beauty and the importance of each human life. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Pick up the pace, Father, I've got a lunch to take. The blind man says when they ask, "Are you that man?" uses the words, "I am," which refer back to the Exodus story of Moses saying to God, who's speaking to him, "Who do I say you need to send me?" And God says, "I am. I am being. I am life. That's who sends me." So the blind man who's now got sight, I am. God has done this. He's not offering a theological, doctoral dissertation. He's not advertising something. He's just stating the fact that he has been restored as God had always intended. He can see. He goes forth with his good news. And that's our mission. We can remember our lives and for all its goods and all its wonders, and it leads us to this moment of that memory leads us to the moment of this mystery of God transforming us, giving us sight, and then we go forward and we proclaim the good news. My brothers and sisters, God grants you power and holiness and the opportunity to proclaim the good news. The good news that we are beloved and that we have infinite possibilities of living out that love for others. We get to understand it. We get to savor it. We get to see it. And thus, if I may paraphrase Admiral Nelson, we get to scan the horizon of our lives. And because God has opened our eyes, we get to see not nothing, but everything.